Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm a forensic psychologist and CBT therapist. And as I've mentioned in my other videos, I'm also a DPsych student. Within this, I am exploring a number of different areas that I've done some videos on. But I wanted to speak about personality disorder because I wanted to really highlight about the impact that that diagnosis can have, because it is a diagnosis that is not without controversy. And this is both in terms as a concept and in terms of the measurement of it, and arguably with the treatment. So personality disorder became recognised as a diagnosis in the 19th century. But when we look at the controversy, it's largely due to the stigma that the diagnosis is presumed and has been found to elicit. And it's a disorder that continues to remain misunderstood clinically and underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed. And part of the difficulty here is that nobody doubts the existence of personality, that we all have a personality. But it's about how you can actually define it as being disordered. And that can be really challenging to specify. And when we look at trying to understand personality disorder, that some of the critiques of the diagnostic process is that it doesn't really adequately capture information about the severity or functionality. But there has been some changes recently, and really being able to better understand how personality difficulties impact upon someone's functioning. And that feels a lot better to try and understand, rather than saying that someone's personality is disordered. And the change happened with the International Classification of Diseases, so the ICD. So this is the 11th edition, and I've done another video about the changes about that. Because what the change that came with this, so this was in 2019, so the World Health Organization released this. And they discarded the type-specific categories that we've often understood or looked at personality disorder with, so thinking about emotionally unstable, antisocial, narcissistic. And this has been replaced with a dimensional classification. And this is annotated by the severity, so mild, moderate and severe. And I said, please check out the other video where I dive a lot more into this. But within this, the professionals can still specify a trait domain, and this is how someone may display kind of their personality. So, as I said in the other video, I go into it a lot more, but just to give you an idea, this could be like negative affectivity, it can be about detachment, but there's these different trait specifiers. And it's the idea that if we use a dimensional diagnosis, that this would hopefully reduce the stigma and the therapeutic pessimism that is often attached to diagnostic labels. But as yet, because it's relatively new and it's still filtering into services, that we need more evidence to actually support the claim that this is going to have the impact that I suppose that many professionals and people within services do want this to lead to. And this is really looking at, as I said, the changes. And although that for some people, and when I've worked with people, some people do find it helpful that a diagnosis kind of makes sense of things, but other people just feels like they're just being put in the box. And obviously it's a really individualised experience, and it's not for me to say what is kind of the right or the wrong way. I just want to, I suppose, educate or explain about how it can be contested and kind of really how we can understand it. Because if we're thinking about, if we're going to use that diagnostic framework or words, that when we're looking at personality disorder, even though there is that undiagnosed population or misdiagnosed, that there is quite a large amount of individuals in the community, in custody, who would meet the criteria. But unfortunately, that many people, for whatever reason, that they don't have a formal assessment, which could mean that all those proposed figures, so within in the custodial population, it can be between 64% and 74%. But some people actually haven't had any sort of formal assessment, so the number could be actually a lot higher. And because of that, a lot of services require some sort of formulation or diagnosis so that people actually can receive that support. So we really need to really understand, as I said, personality difficulties, or however we want to look at it. And there are so many different overlaps. If we look at schizoid personality disorder, when you look at the symptoms and look at the traits, that there is a massive overlap with autism spectrum disorder. So it's about really, as I said, just trying to understand and think about how we can best work with other people, or to really understand ourselves. If you're someone who has had a diagnosis, or if you are someone that has been told they have traits. But when we look at that diagnostic system, sometimes it's a label, isn't it? And people can be given these labels that it could be just their reaction and to what they've been through. Remember that trauma is a massive component when we're looking at how a personality develops, and how kind of things can maybe not create difficulties for us, that we have developed in that way because of what's happened to us. And it's not that anything's wrong with our personality or anything. And within this, I'm going to do another video on this, but you've got the power, threat, meaning frameworks. This is by Johnson and Boyle, so in 2018. And within the power, threat, meaning framework, they emphasise the need to understand an individual's personal narrative. So instead of looking at the diagnosis and asking the question as what has happened to someone, rather than what's wrong with them. And I just really like this framework as kind of moving away from those diagnostic categories. But I hope that it maybe gives an insight into that it's not simple, it's not straightforward. And that, yes, having a diagnosis can be really helpful for some people, but for some people, it simply isn't. So yeah, please, if you've got any comments or questions, then as always, please drop them in the captions and the comments, and thank you for watching. Take care.